Did you have another question for Mr. Singh?
Yeah, I have another one. I'm sorry. I like this topic. That's why I'm talking along.
That's okay.
Peter, please, I can go on. I can go on and on. So this is, I'm really passionate about this sort of stuff, and I'm really inspired by your passion as well.
And the moral Rogoca programa moral taki. Rogoca, Vakasamataka, and Cakacakataka, and the radio bulan vata. Mekanti kenda vata mai.
Ni bulbinaka tale na sema tiko mai ken do tale na nonde wasiningo nongo wasiningo na en nonde programu Vakamada Rogoca Vakasamataka Cakacakataka. Kito mai vikin da vaki tale tiko ni vikim ni en do tale na ikavini lo tulevo vikito do mai vakedur tiko ni ken katoni gaido beauty ko ani na radio bulan do vata Facebook page gaido beauty ko ni ken na singa vakarumbuka. Ketondo keretik nga ke vakarani ni gaido wasia tiko ani na veitalanoa go me wakani levo sarna ulutanga do me veitalanoa taki kito kelani na bebu ke sarna vikanda e andundua kani marau and programa tiko ni menonda bula ni tiko na Trade Commissioner ni VT America Mr. Praneet Singh and ngai wakamadala te ki koe tiko ani na dona ngona leka ngango ke to weekend da waki tiko ani wikim ni se binga na bono ni sema tiko makina and mataka ni koa singalevu ni koa se kavi ni koa ya me wakana ke ni wakarau no mai dola patali tiko ani na nonda veitalanoa na dona vanga bakayalo o talatala manasa bulivo by na World Harvest Assemblies of God Santa Rosa bulabinaka talatala
bulabinaka una. Welcome each every one of you listening tonight. I will try to say very little in English and in Fijian, both. Na a title, there is two titles God gave Jesus. One title is called the Son of God, and the other title is called the Son of Man. So this both title was given to the Lord Jesus Christ. When a title the Son of God means that he was a creator also. The kilani ambulia na kaluna burubura, ni rato ambulia vata na burubura, na kaluna tamana, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So Jesus was the Son of God. On the bottom it says that Jesus also a Son of Man. But in Yokoya, he was born in this world. One thing I want to assure each everyone listening tonight, that Jesus is still in control in this world. Vitalia na levu ni kaya tike burubura right now. We know that United States did one dona kali wa yadro no my inauguration but Joe Biden. Na kato logo is happening no na lako Trump no na lako maingo Biden na COVID-19 anything na kato logo yadro tike burubura. God is still in control because he is a son of God and he is also the son of man. He created this world, we can me perfect. Yeah, somebody saying me perfect. But he is still in control. If you see me live, you also will live. Let's pray. Turanga ke mame baka binibina ka baka levo be ke muni na mbongendai nyo ke muni na kalu levo na kalu kaukawa ko nimbulia na lomalangi ko nimbulia na borobora we ke muni na kalu ya parama, the God of Jacob and the God of Isaac. You are the God of the Israelites and you are also our God. Kito masudi ke muni kito kila, you are still in control. Na ni mame neto veitalanoa na mbongin go turang me vukeir boka ndundua na boka rorongo mai ni vukera no minita mata e vula indo kai chu vikito na mbongo vira na rorongo mai kes e vira chico mai viti. We know that you are here no ni voso e kaya ruose tolo era da buta ne dango au satiko ena kenda malio baka lunga tataka na host vikito vo endo sar na voi tabe na mbongi dai. So we come in the Lord in Jesus name. In the kaya vata na mbongi go. Everybody say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Now I live.
Naka. Nakavalevu, Taltala Manasumbulibu, yeah, when World Harvest Assemblies of God Santa Rosa. Once again, welcoming everyone. Welcome again, Mr. Praneet Singh. Thank you so much for being here. We understand you have a busy schedule, so it's indeed a pleasure to have you join us tonight. Before we turn the time over to Mr. Singh, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves. Kia wakara ni doge bambula nga, merna kilate nga mai ni sio kenda totik nga go. Wakam bimbi verna nga indo sema botik mai dewe matao.
Taltala Manasumbulibu, turangan ni nanduru vesi mai ruo kombenga, au tikungoi Santa Rosa, na ayada nito velotu ya na World Harvest Center, Santa Rosa, Naka.
Naka.
Israeli, Ratu Israeli dinawi turangan ni nandurwesi may one law. Wati ko may Menlo Park,
Number 1.
Takenle.
Naka.
Naka, Elizabeth, Tabupela, Maramani Nukuni, Onailau. I'm here in Mountain View.
Naka.
Elliot Fong, may Pokonikai, Rampi, Wakachikuchungoy, Haywood.
Naka.
Naka. Mute, President.
Peter Lee, mena korona lotu, me yawa me kandabu, wati tikungoi San Bruno, Pinaka.
Naka.
Naka. Santo Beironga Vitigan, another baka, Nito Bakambula Tigani, Antona Kitondo mai veitokani Tigani na Bimadawa, Rongona, Vakasamataka, Cakacakataka, at the radio Bulando Vata, Kito Kirker Tunaki Bakaroni, Nindo was Tigani na Noto Porocramo, Kanimata, na Madangon, my Bulang in Dokaitiko, Mr. Praneet Singh, and a Fiji Trades Commission. Bulavinaka, Mr. Singh.
Bula owner, Bula guests, and Bula all your audience and all your followers. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure's ours. Pleasure's ours. Mr. Singh, the last time we met was probably exactly a year ago, and I understand you had just moved into the Bay.
That's correct, Tuna. Yes, we moved to the Bay around this time last year, and our presence was bought here from LA. So our office was originally based in Los Angeles. So we packed up that office on the direction of our cabinet in Fiji to greener pastures here in the Bay Area. So we're blessed. My family and I are blessed to be here and serving the public. And serving the people of Fiji from Burlingame, California.
Great. So you didn't get a chance to operate or run out of LA. You just came directly here to the Bay.
From my appointment to the moment that the decision was made to move our office. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to operate out of the LA office quite comprehensively. My duty at that stage was to pack up the office in LA and move and establish our presence here in the Bay Area. So unfortunately, I haven't had an opportunity to establish roots in LA and to take in too much of the sights of LA. But the time that I was in LA with my family, we certainly really enjoyed it, and we really enjoyed the hospitality of the local Los Angeles people and folks and community in the area.
Thank you. Great, great. So I know people would probably be curious about you. Do you mind telling us a little about yourself before we go into the more serious stuff?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Ronnie, if we could just all mute if we're not talking, if we could just all mute ourselves, please. Just a lot of background noise. Thank you. Go ahead,
I think that's better. Sure, certainly. Thank you, Una. So I was born in Suva. I'm a proud Fijian boy. My family and I moved when I was a young fellow to New Zealand. And I was privileged enough to do most of, or if not all of my study in New Zealand. Through my time growing up, we maintained a very close relationship with Fiji. Fiji was always my second home, and I certainly identify myself as a Fijian. In terms of my professional and my qualification background, I studied from the University of Auckland. I completed my Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting and Finance. I've also completed my law degree and my Master's in Taxation Studies with honors. In my early career, I started off as a young lawyer, specializing in banking, finance, and taxation law, a firm in New Zealand. And from there, I moved over into corporate banking, corporate and commercial banking. Did that for a number of years, and found a good liking towards numbers. So I completed my chartered accountancy study and became a fully fledged chartered accountant, and used my frontline banking experience to build a career in back office finance in the banking sector. So I worked as a senior advisor and senior accountant to the CFO of ANZ in New Zealand, which is a large financial institution. And then from there, with the birth of my first child, my first daughter, my family and I decided to venture off into public practice and start my own chartered accountancy and management consultancy business. So I did that for a number of years. And within that time, found my calling in the public sector. So I was blessed and very privileged enough to be given this role to represent my people and represent the proud nation of Fiji in one of the world's greatest nations in USA. So my region looks after currently both Canada and USA. And as you mentioned, I can maybe delve into my role as a trade commissioner in a further follow-up question.
Thank you. Wow, amazing. I don't know about you, but for me personally, and probably a lot of us right now may be breathing a sigh of relief. It's like a new beginning with all that's happened around here in the United States, because we know that everything that happens here in the United States impacts the whole world, even our tiny country of Fiji. And so you probably feel the same way, right? Or how do you feel? Not to go into too much of political affiliation and all that, but it's kind of like, okay, now we're done with that. Now we can move forward. I'm sure you are a little excited, or correct me if I'm wrong, about new beginnings.
Absolutely. I mean, I can certainly feel an air of optimism and confidence in the market space since the inauguration of the new president and the new administration coming in. What I'm particularly excited for is the United States taking a more proactive approach to climate change and sustainability. So the United States taking a step towards ratifying the Paris Climate Accord and the Paris Convention is a step in the right direction, especially for small island developing states like Fiji, where we feel the full brunt of climate change, although we are a very small contributor to climate change in itself. In terms of where I see the alignment between the goals of Fiji and the values of Fiji in the United States, I do see a narrowing of that gap and a greater alignment of our values as two sovereign nations in that respect. Now, also looking at the importance of North America from a Fijian perspective, North America is one of the greatest and largest economies in the world, if not the leading economy in the world. So us maintaining a good relationship, good trade relationship with our counterparts here in North America is important for us back home in Fiji. Just to put things into perspective in terms of data and numbers, Fiji is in a privileged position with North America in the sense that we have a strong positive balance of trade when it comes to North America, which is a unique position to be in and also a very good position to be in. And that's largely driven on the back of the success of Fiji Water building their brand and sustainably growing the exports out of Fiji for that commodity.
It's interesting. I came to the US for the very first time about 20 years ago. And back then, you hardly saw Fiji water. But now it's like the water. Everywhere you go, you see Fiji water. So it makes us proud. I'm sure we all feel the same way. Yeah, that day we talked about other things. Here we are as Fijians. Most of us plan to go back home eventually. Most of us want to kind of build a little something back home before we even head back home. Is there anything that you could, the opportunities that you could share so Fijians or our listeners can kind of look forward to and plan on doing back home?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fiji has a wealth of opportunity at the moment. And as with investment and most opportunity, timing is a big part of making a good, successful investment decision and making sure that you get a good, realistic return on your investment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why, I guess, just to get the ball rolling, for my presence here in the Bay Area was our cabinet recognized the importance of our diaspora population.
Mm-hmm.
Our diaspora population here in the in North America, it started coming through. I mean, I've met a lot of successful people that have migrated here, sort of in the 60s, even earlier. But we've certainly in the 80s we had a solid stream of migrants from Fiji coming and settling here into the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Now we look 40 years later; those individuals have now established themselves quite well.
Mm-hmm.
They've paid off their homes. Usually, they usually have one or two homes. They have children that are well qualified, educated, that are now standing on their own feet and earning themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got now a lot of what we call our baby boomers that are now looking toward and forward to their retirement. And this is where a connection back home, connection back to Fiji is important. And what we've recognized is because we've got a large diaspora population here, having representation in this area for our diaspora to connect back home for the purposes of retirement and connecting back to their roots in Fiji was one of the reasons and considerations that we took into account when moving here. In terms of opportunities in Fiji, Fiji by and large is a tourism-centric country.
Right.
So 40% prior to the prior to the pandemic, 40% of our GDP was made up purely by tourism revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're hurting at the moment with the lack of tourism and the closed borders internationally. As a result, we are now working across, so taking a very government-wide approach. So not just one ministry, all our ministries are taking a very coordinated approach around trying to find areas of opportunity for us to diversify our industries in Fiji. So we're not just solely reliant on tourism. So if you were to look at tourism-centric assets now, now is a great time for investors, overseas investors that have accumulated wealth and equity, that are looking to invest in tourism-centric assets on the hopes of a rebound once international borders reopen. So there are tourism-centric assets, hotels, resorts, and the like, leisure centers in Fiji that can be snapped up at a bargain on good buyers' terms, in essence. Moving on from just tourism, I know a lot of your audience are strong Fijians, and we have a lot of your audience that are from the rural side of Fiji. So we know the value that Fiji has when it comes to our crop building and crop making background. So we've got good, rich volcanic soil in Fiji. We've got sunlight on tap. We've got and we've also got an abundance of water, so that has that creates great opportunity for us to grow crop, add some value in Fiji, process some crop in Fiji, and utilize and sort of sell that out as a form of export from Fiji. So we're seeing the likes of and commodities in that respect that we're seeing. That are moving at increasing levels are healthcare and wellness-centric products, such as ginger products like crystallized ginger, turmeric, but we're also seeing, surprisingly, a growth in Carver as well, and more so Yeah, and more so in the. I mean, we can't really talk about Fijian-made products without talking about
Carver.
Carver, right? You
You got to talk about Carver. Yes.
Yeah, you got to talk about Carver. So Carver's also got tremendous growth potential here in the United States. So particularly in the health and wellness conscious market, growing market here, what we're finding is there's an acceptance and a curiosity around the applications of Carver for those purposes. So anti-insomnia, muscle relaxing, post-gym workout, those sort of applications for Carver are now increasingly being explored to innovate Carver and the applications of Carver. Some of the thoughts that I've been having in terms of bringing Carver into the mainstream would be it'd be great if we could make Carver available in all coffee and cafe shops as an alternative to caffeine. That would be a great dream. And if something was to come out of my term here, and seeing Carver in coffee shops would be I would certainly put a smile on my face.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Mr. Singh. I have just out of curiosity, I don't drink kava, but everybody else drinks kava, and so just out of curiosity, I had visited a few kava bars around here. Fijian owned, and even the ones that are not owned by Fijians, owned by Americans, and it is quite interesting. And so I would go in there and just sit and just watch the kind of people that come in, and it really is amazing. So the market is huge. I had conversations with some of these patrons that went into this kava bars, and so the interesting thing is some of them had really mentioned that it's an alternative to alcohol. Like, oh, we love coming here because it's the hangover is not as bad as we get in from alcohol compared to what they get from alcohol. They can actually sit there and do their work just like, how you said, a coffee shop. So the setup is like that, but it's kava, and they've kind of modified it to suit their taste buds a little with like tea. And so the market is huge, and just I have a lot of friends back home that are kava farmers, and some that are trying to help these kava farmers. I always feel that there's a disconnect between the farmers and the huge market that we know that's available. Is there anything that would be helpful?
Yeah, definitely, and you've raised a good point there, Una. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. So the government has realized that there is a bit of a disconnect when it comes to our farmers back home, those that have the supply and the actual markets. So that is what our offices around the world, our trade commissions around the world are equipped to do. So we help connect markets for our Fijian products. In terms of how we go about showcasing Fijian products, especially our exports also, and our health and wellness based products, is traditionally we would participate in trade shows. So there are some great trade shows here in North America, which we go out and participate. We bring our Fijian-made products and our suppliers out, and we showcase their products, and we engage with distributors, middlemen, wholesalers, in the hopes of building awareness, but also building those supply contracts. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, trade shows have ceased indefinitely. So we've had to strategize and come up with different ways of making those connections. What we found here in North America, most suppliers and distributors like a hands-on approach. So what I would suggest for our kava farmers, particularly kava farmers back home that are looking to move their product here into North America, is to do your homework and do some planning, particularly around export and getting export ready. So when it comes to kava, and I guess you could use this for all other export products, particularly consumables that are coming into North America, is that there is a regulatory framework in which you need to work under. So the FDA, in this instance, would be your relevant authority, and USDA. So with FDA, you basically need to register your export facility with the FDA, and that requires a bit of a checklist and there's a number of compliance steps that you need to go through. My office will in fact be running an FDA compliance webinar in the next month, so I'll share that with you in the coming weeks, for the benefit of the audience as well, and I'd be glad to add your audience to that webinar if they do want to participate. But in terms of going back to your question, for exporters at home, what they would need to do is plan, get through the regulatory framework, get their product ready, and to a stage that you can basically send out samples to interested parties. So once we're at that place, we've got at a stage where we can send out samples. That certainly makes life a lot more easier. Now, in terms of traditional applications of kava, there seems to be a saturation already of product that is coming into North America, and from my understanding, the price is relatively fixed in the sense that there is high levels of competition, and you would need to set yourself apart in terms of either quality or some other aspect in terms of your unique selling point for your kava in order to make a dent. In that respect, if you want to make good organic growth of your kava here in a new market, then I would strongly suggest researching your market and changing the application of your particular kava to change your unique selling point.
Thank you.
Kava is a new growth point here in terms of kava, if you know what I mean.
So it's brand new, but it's just taking off like wildfire. That's all I could say. I'd like to ask my fellow members of the panel if they have any questions for Mr. Singh.
That's one thing I want to thank you. I'm so glad that you share everything, and we heard from you. I think this is the first time. This is the first time ever we heard something like this. When we talk about kava, I want to share. This is my point of view. What I can share for us tonight is every time I enter the supermarket here in the United States, when I look at the Fiji water, it makes my heart just my heart just come up, because that is something that recognize our government in Fiji, in America. It's like a very big picture. When you see Fiji water all the way right up to the, right to the top, to the president, to the people in Hollywood, everywhere. It's a big picture. So when we talk about kava, is only for the Fijian community. It's only for the Fijian and the Indian people. Only people who drink kava, not Una. Una don't drink kava. Okay? So my suggestion is this: if the government of Fiji, that you are the representative here in America, Fiji can create something else, to come up in our small nation, to come here and show, just like the Fiji water. It's a big thing,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know a few other things are here, like tapioca and the tin fish, but those are small things. What I'm talking about is the big thing. Every time I go into the supermarket, my heart just lifts up when I see Fiji water. People are buying Fiji water.
Absolutely.
That is a little point of view.
I really appreciate that, Pastor. Might I just add? Look, thank you for your blessings at the beginning of this meeting. Sarah, I was moved away by your message. Thank you for all of that. So you are right. Fiji water has done a tremendous job for us, and you are right. They're essentially little billboards. And they're doing fantastic work for Fiji. In actual fact, the leaders of Fiji Water had come up with a great marketing plan, and they executed it perfectly. From the shape of their bottle, the way that it fits in your hand, it gives it a feel of luxury, and they approach their marketing in a very strategic way. So they went out to Hollywood shows and giving the water away for free, essentially. Right. But then they created that awareness with the rich and famous that this is a water that needs to go with the scene.
You need to have this water.
In essence, yeah. So I mean, and they've done a fantastic job. They've created some great goodwill here in North America, and we've certainly recognized that. So what we've done in Fiji, particularly through my ministry, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Tourism and Transport, under the leadership of Permanent Secretary Shaheen Ali, we have recognized the intrinsic value of the Fijian-made brand image. And what we're doing is working pretty hard in the background with developing the Made in Fiji brand. So what we are now doing is working closely with our suppliers back home and helping them register so that they have a license to use the Made in Fiji emblem on their products, which then in turn will help them market their products in overseas markets.
So true.
On the back of that goodwill that has also already been captured by Fiji Water.
I have also noticed ginger, turmeric on shelves around here, the shops, and they actually have Fiji made or made in Fiji, and it just makes you feel so good, feel so proud.
Absolutely, the patriotic Fiji in Fijian in me comes out, and makes me feel really proud as well.
Yes, we can all relate to that feeling, huh?
Yes.
I think President Lee has a question.
Maybe a question, Mr. Singh. You were talking about tourism, and how tourism, the industry is affected because of this pandemic, and how we can, diversify. And I think you talked a lot about agriculture, which is probably, the soil that we have, it's all fertile, organic, and so forth. Huh? But I've been only here in the U.S. for the last 10 years. I spent all my life in Fiji. But there's something that I noticed, one of the key issues locally in Fiji is the lack of expertise when it comes to agriculture. I'm so sad that the government sent all the people abroad, even to do like aquaculture training in Taiwan, China, and other places, But that information is never disseminated to the people that are doing the groundwork. For example, the farmers, I give you an example. I can't remember the figures, but when I was in Fiji, there was a big bill that we pay on the import of potatoes. Big commodity, because everybody eats potato, right? Even though we have our staple food. And then they decided to start planting our local potatoes. And I'm not too sure what the status is now, But they never did get good crops. And it's basically, it goes back to the farming methods, yeah? So, and when I say that, because if we're looking at export and the people in Fiji don't have a plan, like you said, we can have all the markets, but we don't have the consistency in supply, yeah? And that will pose a big problem. So I think a lot of the coordination work, and because we're such a small country, it's almost impossible for one person as a farmer just to do his own thing. It's got to be done collectively in Fiji, so that when marketing is probably easier when it's collectively done and produced. Huh? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, even when for us here, the Fijians that are here, and we buy cassava and we buy dalo that's imported from Fiji that's already frozen. One of the key issues is quality control.
Right.
Because sometimes we have very good cassava and sometimes a very bad cassava. Likewise, the dalo. And so if we don't control that, give Fiji water, the quality is always the same. Huh? But for us, all these agricultural products, if we do not have control and good quality control, then we will have a problem. Because you can't please people if the quality is not good.
Absolutely.
I have another one, but let's talk about that first, and then I can share something.
Yeah, sure, Peter. I think you've raised some really, really good points there. So I guess to start answering your question, the government has recognized that we could have been doing a better job around the agricultural sector, and And in essence, that's exactly what we've done. We've taken on that feedback and we've revamped the Ministry of Agriculture. So we've got a new PS in, and he's got some great initiatives to help build that sector in Fiji. In terms of driving growth in the agricultural sector, the government of Fiji has now eliminated customs duty on the importation of agricultural equipment and capital items for the purposes of farming. So that eliminates red tape for the investment in much needed capital items such as and technology items that are needed for sustainable crop growth in Fiji at a consistent quality level and consistent supply level. Another good point that you've raised there, Mr. Lee, is the importance and how import substitution works hand in hand with growing our export base. In essence, if we can produce more products at home and eliminate the amount that we're importing, we are doing that's just as fine a job as us trying to grow our export base. If we can substitute our imports, it's a step in the right direction, just as effective as increasing our exports. So, yes, in terms of, I am aware of our efforts previously in potato. In terms of the full report, I actually I haven't gone through any reports or formal reports from that effort of growing potatoes. But my understanding is with commercial agriculture and most agricultural processes and scientific processes, it involves a level of trial and error and clinical analysis. And to be successful in any commercial enterprise, you need to take a methodical approach and understand that failure is a part of success. So just because we failed, maybe we used the wrong species of potato in the first instance, unfortunately with agriculture, things come with a cycle, and there is an investment of time and resource that you need to make when it comes to trialing and testing these products, so there is a level of time and investment that's involved, which is a barrier to gain when it comes to trialing and experimenting, but the idea there is not to be discouraged, and that each failure should be an opportunity for us to learn and bring changes about the way that we are doing current things.
Maybe if I could just share one little story here. I was still in Fiji, and there was this potato farmer, because I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He came to help some people in Fiji in farming, some of the members of our church in the Navua, Deumba area. But they were all growing dalo, and one of his purpose for coming was to form a cooperative. But he went down, look at the Wakambele area in Navua, and when he came back to Suva, he met with me, and he said, "I cannot believe it." And I said, "What can you not believe?" He said, "These guys, the only way of, they try not to use fertilizers, but they'll plant a plot and then harvest that plot, let the grass grow while they plant another plot, and then come back here. But they don't use fertilizers." And I said, "So what's wrong with that?" Then he said, "You don't get the crop you should get." And I thought about it, and I realized when they started planting the urunivonu in that area, we used to have good sized urunivonu, and all of a sudden it just shrunk, then got small. And then he said to me, when I plant potato, and he's a potato farmer, he said, before we ever plant, we do a soil test. And after we do the soil test, we know exactly what that potato needs. So we put fertilizers into the soil for the need of that potato. So when I get a harvest, I know exactly the kind of harvest, the crop I'm going to get. And his main client at that time was McDonald's, and he always said they like to specify the size of the potato. But I mean, those basic things, are the things I'm talking about, that agriculture should be more involved in making sure those kind of tests are done. Yeah? So that when you're planting, I mean, we will have the natural disasters that you can't control. But at least if all things were fine, we know exactly what we will reap because we prepared well the soil and all the other things that should go with that.
100%. Sorry, Una.
I said basic but essential stuff.
Yeah. I think what it comes down to, Peter, and you've sort of hit the nail on the head in this respect, is I think for any type of success, you need to do your homework and you need to have adequate planning and due diligence. You can't just willy-nilly get into commercial agriculture without due diligence and good planning. And if you were to plan and understand what type of soil you've currently got and what it's good for, and what it's fit for purpose, that's the only way you can really get the best return on your investment, your initial investment, when it comes to commercial agriculture, from my understanding.
Thank you. Did you have another question for Mr. Singh?
Yeah, I have another one. I'm sorry. I like this topic. That's why I'm talking along.
That's okay.
Peter, please.
Go ahead.
I can go on. I can go on and on. So this is. I'm really passionate about this sort of stuff, and I'm really inspired by your passion as well.
Mr. Singh, there's something that we all eat in Fiji that is common, and that is chicken.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at Fiji, whether it's fish or chicken or lamb, probably, But we like you said, we try, if we can save importing, it'll be good, huh? But unfortunately, I don't know whether they still have that monopoly. But really, that industry in Fiji, the cost of chicken is so expensive that it's not easy to buy chicken locally, right?
Yeah.
And yet, if we can produce, we have good chicken and cheap chicken in the U.S. And I was trying to do this when I was in Fiji to get an import license, but it's always blocked because they always say there's some disease of the chicken and so forth. And I wondered to myself, and how come they can export it to Tonga? And
Yes,
so
sir.
I don't know what it is, but I just look at some of those things that sometimes our own government is stopping that, because of their own reasons, because maybe there's a monopoly that they made a deal with the Australian, New Zealand company, the Crest people, I'm not too sure. But at the end of the day, we really need to look at the welfare of our people, What are they paying for something that can be also grown in Fiji if we just look at other ways of having more chicken farms?
Absolutely. You've raised a good point there, Mr. Lee. Now, in Fiji, in terms of our open market economy, we are considered a relatively open market economy with price control on what we deem necessities, which are policed and by the Consumer Competition Authority in Fiji, in essence. In terms of but chicken itself, I can't really comment too much because I don't have any background in the commodity of chicken itself. In terms of the first things that sort of come into mind for chicken itself is that it is inherently classified as a high risk product because it's an animal product. And animal products do form a slightly higher tier or higher level of risk when you're looking at different types of import items. And I think you're right in the sense that, yes, there are disease considerations, quarantine, biosecurity, and all these sort of considerations from a regulatory perspective that need to be taken into account when you're looking at animal products. In terms of Fiji itself, I'll probably need to look into this a little bit deeper. So maybe we can take this offline, and I can maybe get back in touch. I'll take your contact details, Peter, and we can involve the discussion around particularly chicken and see what the holdup there is, and see if we can get some sort of solution for you for a long term sort of solution. Mr.
Yeah, why I say that, Mr. Singh, because we don't have to import, yeah? We can grow a lot more, but how is the question? What is stopping that? Why can't we have more people farming chicken?
Absolutely. So the government is helping and is working, especially when it comes to import substitution. So if there is a good case for a young for any entrepreneur or farmer in Fiji with that has done the appropriate planning, spoken to the right experts, got the right consents, got the right permits, and has and can showcase that they have a good actionable business plan. We do have mechanisms in the government where people can approach the government through my ministry for grants. and the government will help for the purchases of capital items and capital equipment to help those individuals. The key to success in this instance is, once again, planning and speaking to the right people in order to get your venture into a position where it can be considered in a reasonable way. And I think that seems to be the disconnect in Fiji, in the sense that some people find it quite hard to plan and find it hard to develop a business plan. We have recognized that in the ministry as well. So we are now trying to get more resource to our frontline staff in the ministry to help our Fijians back home develop business plans and develop a case so that they have access to grant and funding.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Singh, I can talk to you offline about that chicken thing, because I think I know a little bit about how the farmers and the chicken company work, that I can explain to you, and you can check it to see if it's still the way they're doing it or some other ways. But I definitely feel like there's a lot of opportunity for local growth of chicken, so that
Sure, sir.
no export at all.
You've got my commitment. I'll work with that on you. Yeah.
And I have another one, but I think I'll do it offline. The wellness industry.
All right, sure thing.
Yeah.
Great. Elliot, did you have anything you wanted to ask Mr. Singh or President Dinavi?
No, everything's going good so far. Thank you.
So far, so good. Taking it all in.
Yeah.
I just want, there's a Tongan friend of mine that's why we are not importing clams from Fiji.
Yeah, so well, that's a very good question, and I've actually looked into this. So obviously, Nakai is a delicacy that is wanted, and even myself, I've looked far and wide to try and get Nakai. Unfortunately, see, with clams, once again, it's a meat product or an animal product, and there are certain regulatory requirements that are needed in order to, and rightfully so, to protect consumers in their countries. So in the US, what this system has recognized is the FDA clearance for safety of products. And unfortunately, because Kai doesn't meet certain testing requirements for FDA, it is excluded as a commodity that can be imported here for commercial purpose.
Nice.
Okay.
In saying that, the opportunity, however, arises for someone in aquaculture that was really interested, that could produce kai in an artificial setting, if it could even be done, and control the environment in which the kai is grown. And then you've ticked your boxes in terms of FDA compliance for the commercial sale of kai products here in the United States.
I think with all of that he said, whether it's kai, whether it's kava or chicken, and just the planting of the root crops, my take is that it just really goes down to education. Like, they just need to be educated. And I know that most of the time when we talk about education, people probably think like, I cannot go to school, or I cannot go to school anymore or get a degree and all of that. No, I am talking about having those courses that people can attend depending on what it is they're interested in. And just going back to the kava industry, I know that there are a lot of people here, a lot of Fijians, that have kava plantations back home. And, and that's the plan, like to find a way to be able to come and market it here, because the market is huge. And so just with that disconnect, I guess, goes back to education and all that planning that you mentioned. How do people plan? How can they start planning and all those things? So I think that maybe that's something to look into, having those courses. And I know that we have just a few minutes. My last question, Mr. Singh, would be, you are here. Like, I just wanted to bring us back here to the United States and your post as Trades Commissioner. If you could just share a little bit about what the major trade opportunities are here that you're currently working on.
Yeah, that's a good question once again, Una. In terms of where we're at the moment, we have reckon, unfortunately, because we're a tourism-centric country, the borders being closed has posed a big issue for us. In saying that, Fiji does remain open. So we have also recognized that, yes, we are an archipelago of 300 islands, rough islands in the South Pacific, but by and large, we have a greater economic zone when you're looking at our blue backyard, which is our ocean. So when it comes to Fiji being open, we have formulated blue lanes in Fiji, so people can still come to Fiji by boat. And if they can show that they've isolated themselves at sea and can produce a negative COVID test, then they're more than welcome to come into Fiji. So that's a big project that the government has been working on in the background to keep keen travelers that can get there by boat to get there in a sense.
And keep Fiji safe at the same time, right?
Absolutely, and because Fiji is safe at the same time as well. So on that note, another thing that has caught the attention of North Americans is the fact that Fiji is COVID contained. So I'm now through my office getting a lot more inquiries around film productions, so Hollywood film productions and series productions in Fiji because of its natural scenic, luxurious and paradisical beauty. So that seems to be a very strong channel of inquiry through my office. In terms of investment, it is a very tough time worldwide for investment. A lot of investors now are cautious in terms of where they're investing their money, and the general theme of affairs seem to be that a lot of investors are now paying off debt or accumulating reserves as opposed to taking risks, especially in emerging market countries. So in terms of our focus, we have been focusing quite largely and heavily on diversifying our export base. So as Mr. Lee alluded to a little bit earlier, agricultural products that are processed in Fiji for a growing health and wellness conscious North American market here has a great potential. If you could also add in USDA organic certified, even great, even better, greater margins. So that seems to be the trajectory and the way that we're sort of heading, I think, especially for the current duration while borders remain closed and this pandemic still rages on. But in saying that, things are still positive. Fiji is always going to be a paradisical and tropical island that people look forward to traveling to at least one stage, one time in their life as a sort of bucket list type destination.
Right.
And look, Fiji's. We just got to remain positive and remain, and trying to help build confidence in Fiji in a sense. Fiji has a lot going for itself, and I just basically want to leave it on that positive note.
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Mr. Singh, tourism probably was our #1 foreign exchange earner, right?
Yes, sir, it was.
Now that it's gone down that way, where would you place overseas remittances in our foreign exchange earnings?
Yeah, so that's been forming a lot of our conversations to date. Obviously, our currency is pegged on the US dollar, so we have to have a reasonable amount of reserves in order to have confidence in our monetary system. In terms of our reserves, from our economic reports, from what I've read in from our reserve bank, is that we are running quite healthy in terms of our reserves. There is no need for us at this stage to look at devaluing our currency. So stable currency, where it's at, seems to be good from our economic indicators. In terms of remittances have reduced and have come down. And I'm just thinking from memory, I think over the last quarter, over the last year, remittances did gradually come down. However, since TC Yasa, remittances have gone up. So, and from my understanding, I think you're sort of looking at about 7 to 10% increase in remittances just over the post Yasa period, which has been about 6 weeks.
That's good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Singh. I am personally excited just because, like I said, new beginning, new day. And I know that in due time, and I just feel like it won't be long before there'll be an explosion of travel, tourism, just keeping it on a positive note and trying to encourage everyone to just stay positive and
100%.
excited about the future. And
Absolutely. It's a precarious time. But it's a temporary time. We've just got to understand that we are a resilient people and we'll get through it.
definitely. Any more questions from anybody else?
Just where's your office, Mr. Singh?
So I'm in the beautiful county of San Mateo, and I'm in Burlingame, just by the airport. I would love to host you guys. I would love to have you guys here for a networking event.
Sure.
This is on very.
I'll
Privilege.
get your detail, your number from Una, Mr. Singh, and then I can have a chat with you.
That sounds good,
Sure.
Mr. Lee. Feel free to call me anytime. But Una, I had the privilege of having you over to my office
Yes.
earlier when we
Opening.
hosted Ambassador Sala when he came into his role as a new ambassador. But I'm hoping to emulate that again with your team and your panel of experts here as well. Once lockdown restrictions are lifted.
Yeah, definitely. We all look forward to that. So that brings us to a close. Thank you, everyone. And I would like to ask if once we get the recording up to our Radio Bulandovata Facebook platform, if you could just share it with our friends so we all know and can hear the conversation and the topic of conversation today. Sampai dapat taling tugai kena dito vital no na kavi ni kua bina kavale na sema tiko mai na radio bulan do bata dito bulan into kai tiko na trade commissioner ni viti ke Amerika matataki kada tiko ke Mr. Praneet Singh mai vakai tapat tiko na vital no na kavi ni kua na ibanga vakayalo tal manasa bulibo bina kavakali tal na do bangla tiko ni mai mai vito manitu na vital no President Peter Lee, Vinakvalevu, President Sireli the Navi, Elliot Fong, Elizabeth Pella, Nominito Kanigo, Unabuninda Kua, and a radio Bulandovata, Rongoda, Vakasamataka, Cakacakataka. Medova Nangona, then I gave Veronga di Domo Talitigo, Kina Marro Tikunambula, Niti Vakadeva Takomanda.
Ni voro tiga kina program Barutaki. Rogoca, Vakasamataka, and Cakacakataka, and the radio Bulandovata, Mekoti Kenda Vatamai.